Hi, welcome to another release of Dogen. This is the sprint demo for sprint 21. So there's really a lot to demo really, so what I'll do is I'll have a quick chat about the features that we introduced and how they kind of work. As I mentioned in the release notes, the features themselves, from a perspective of code generation, you're not going to see any difference. You're going to generate exactly the same code as you did before, provided you change your use of metadata and you use the new stereotypes. But in terms of the internal organization of Dogen, quite a lot has changed. So I don't think I actually presented this. The user visible changes really are all to do with these new meta model elements for these secondary types. You'll forgive me for using this term secondary types, I just didn't quite know what to call them. So what do I mean by secondary types? So if I just grab one of the test models that we've got at the moment. So in the past, you had no idea, no way of actually getting Dogen to emit a registrar. I mean, Dogen would just do it automatically for you if it detected that it was needed. So for instance, if you're using inheritance, then the registrar was emitted, and then just for a good measure, let's just quickly show you what I mean by a registrar. So if we're looking at the CPP model, so if I just quickly go to the code for the CPP model, this chap here, and if I look at serialization, you'll see here that there's a type here called registrar, and this job is very simply to just register any types involved in inheritance. It registers with the boost archive all of these types. And in the past we had a number of issues where the type would just get emitted automatically without you even knowing it was happening, and there was no way of renaming the type, and there was no way of actually, it had a completely separate pipeline that had literally nothing to do with the existing meta types. So what we've done now is we've modeled this type correctly, as well as a few others, as you can see here. And it is actually a regular meta model type, just like any other type. You can name it yourself. It is emitted if you create an element in your model with the type of MASD serialization type registrar. And if in the future there's any properties associated with this type, I mean at the moment there aren't any, but if there's any properties, then they will just be here as part of the type. It also means that if you'd like to add documentation to the type, you can. If you'd like to change any aspect, as you would with other types, the variability support is all there. It behaves very much like any other type. And so as an example of another type that was affected by this change, we have the entry point. So entry point is another case, just like registrar, where we were doing some magic. In this particular case, we were actually just issuing an entry point without you having visibility of what was going on. And it was mainly used for testing, to be fair. And we had a completely separate way to handle this for outside of testing. Now we have an entry point that's declared as a meta model element, and for instance in this particular case, I mean, I've created this profile called untypable. It's not the best of names, but the idea is that we do not want this type to be issued for types, for the facet types. So in other words, if you go to the profile and you have a quick look at what untypable means, we just disable it for types, the types facet. Now none of this was possible before, because of course there was no way of connecting profiles with any of these special fabric types. Now it's perfectly possible. They're just like regular types. Similarly, if you'd like to create, if you like to add Visual Studio supports, you just need to add the solution and project. You can add them separately now, and if you want to fix the GUID, you can just supply a GUID here. And exactly the same way in C# you can do that. We also added a meta type for assistance, which is something specific to C#, which will be removed in the future, but just in order not to break the code, we put that there. So really this was the gist of this release. It was a really large amount of work in moving these legacy types as they existed and making them part of the existing pipeline. So if I show you the meta model, as you can see, it's quite a large model now. And in here, if you zoom in a little bit, you can now see that more types are appearing. For instance, Visual Studio was recently added, and as well as build, as well as serialization. And this is the idea in the future, is that we expect this meta model to just grow, keep growing as we find more types and we model these types. We expect this meta model to just keep growing towards our right, and that's by design really. And we want to, every time we find one of these types, we want to model it as best we can, as we've done, for example, with MS Build targets and Visual Studio projects and solutions. These are very close to the domain that they're modeling. And then we expose these via stereotypes, as we've done here. This is kind of really the direction we wanted to take. So that's kind of like the crux of what this release is all about, really. And in the next release we also have some more refactoring coming in, this time related to how we're handling generation. This is actually quite an exciting bit of work. Thanks very much for watching.